All right. Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Brooklyn Raga Massive live weekly series. We are continuing our virtual journey each week and week out as we navigate the pandemic. Things are opening up, but it's best that we continue to take care of each other, mask up where you can, get vaccinated if you haven't already, and just remember to keep safe social distance practicing until we're through the thick of this. But it's really great to have everyone. Again, we're here virtually weekly since the pandemic started in March of 2020. I think we're almost at 30,000 audience members over the course of the last year through our virtual series. So we're really happy about that. And thank you everyone for continuing to tune in and for donating where you can. All of our weekly virtual programming is free and open to the public. It also remains on our social media platforms for you to check out and revisit and enjoy. So again, thank you. And if you're not in a position to support us financially, you can do so by spreading the word, but you can also share our programming and our mission with those who are in a position to support. So this week, we're very, very excited to welcome Sarah Thawer, joining us from Toronto, Canada. I've been really anxious to kind of bring Sara into the mix. What Sara does just musically and creatively, artistically is I find very inspirational. I find very genuine. I find very refreshing, and it's such a pleasure to have her join us this week. I think just a couple of housekeeping things before I bring Sara in. The format tonight will be a little bit of playing, and then we'll go into conversation, a little bit of playing, conversation. So please, as usual, we are streaming through YouTube. Feel free to put your comments and your questions in the chat. I will be facilitating throughout the hour. And without further ado, Sara, welcome to the Brooklyn Raga Massive Weekly Series.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm going to start off with some playing because as soon as I start to talk, I can't close my mouth. So I'm going to get right into it and looking forward to chatting in a few minutes. Thank you. Hello.
Yes, 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 yes. Dum ba da dee da 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 da. Boo da da dee da 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 da. Yes. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. How are you feeling? Can you tell us like where you are, how you are?
Sorry?
Can you tell us where you are, how you are, how are you feeling? How's
Yeah.
how does it feel to be the last kind of year playing virtually and just like putting your energy out into like the webosphere instead of the concert stage? Like how are things kind of feeling for you these days?
So right now I'm in Toronto, Canada, and you know what? I feel like for me, pre-pandemic was really go go go. Before the pandemic hit, I was in LA getting ready to go on a tour for 2 months, and I didn't have time to really sit down and reflect on what I really wanted to do. And I felt like COVID kind of stopped everybody. And, I'm the type of person, if someone's playing there or if someone who I look up to is playing there, I'm just like ready and itching to go and figure it all out. So everybody being on halt and stop really made me stop and reflect. And right now, I'm writing my own music is something that I'm doing. I just confirmed the producer today. I can't say who it is, but I can't even begin to explain my excitement of this album that I'm going to do. And I think I'm really taking a different approach now in terms of being an artist, but a drummer. And it's just going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, super excited.
Very exciting. We're going to get to all as many details as we can, but I'm going to just again take a commercial break so you can catch your breath a hot minute and just we have some audience members. Please, I encourage you. Thank you for putting your questions and comments for Sarah in the chat. We will get to everything as we kind of, get through the next 45 minutes, an hour. But Sarah, I just have to say, for those of us here who are new to Sarah, it doesn't take, an extensive Google and YouTube search to find out a bunch of the the video series you've kind of produced from your own kind of creative world, but also the series where videos that you've in performance for other concerts and festivals and interviews for other podcasts. I was just talking to you about the interview you did with Sarah Hagen of Zildjian's podcast. And I found that and I'll just reiterate, I found it so refreshing and really engaging and honest and kind of stripped of the pretense that comes along with being a creator and artist in the public eye. Yeah, all artists are in the public eye, but then there's like a level where we reach where your videos start to get more views and you become more of this persona and more of this example that people look to for artistry. So I just kind of wanted to thank you for maintaining this refreshing, really honest and genuine um, nature that you have. I think it's really fantastic, honestly.
That really, really means the world to me. And I want to add a couple of things actually. I want to say first, thank you to you and thank you to Neil for having me a part of this festival. It means so much to me. And I remember when I saw the initial email, I saw Brooklyn Raga, and I was like, whoa. I finally felt like I belonged somewhere with just that name. Growing up for me, I grew up with, Indian family. My love for music began with like tabla and Indian percussion instruments and Indian music. And the beautiful thing about being in Toronto is that to be a surviving musician in Toronto, you have to diversify yourself in terms of genres of music that you play. So I always aim to be out of my comfort zone, playing gospel music in church for 5 years, touring with Cuban bands, Brazilian bands, hip hop, big band, whatever it is. And I feel like every time I talk to my peers, my mentors, my friends, and everybody who's so amazing, I ask them, so who were your first influences? And it was always like, Miles Davis, who's obviously my influence, but those were their first influences. And for me, it was like, like Zakir Hussain, or it was like Bollywood movies. And so anyway, I just say all this to say is that I feel so happy that Brooklyn Raga Massive, this organization exists. And it just, for me, this is proof that you can coexist in both worlds. I'm a heavy jazz geek and hip hop geek and popular culture geek, but yet my roots and my love for Indian music is always there. So this organization and this vision is just so heartwarming for me. So thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, and like just the mutual love and ditto, 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 and virtual hugging is like I'm just like bursting with so much of it. And I wanted to also just kind of speak to that because two things. First of all, one of the comments you made about the labeling of musical genres and labeling of your music as fusion as kind of like a badge of pride, because like really we tend to shy away from the fusion label in music because it can be a little bit confusing, or maybe it's like just kind of disregarded or it's misinterpreted as being something other than what it is. But I loved how you embrace the definition and reclaim it as actually fusion is a confluence of influence, and an integration of all of these different influences and avenues in order to make this like a blossoming of a music. And I really kind of loved the reclaiming and redefining of what fusion means and what it is. I really appreciated that when you spoke about that.
Thank you. I'm not a fan of labels because I feel like when I went to school and when I had my audition and they were like, "Can you play this 6/8 or can you play this thing in 7 or can you play this?" And I'm like, literature and stuff came after the music, and music is definitely a feeling and a vibe. And I feel like for me, every time people ask me what genre do I play, it's funny that my goal has always been, and every time I enter a situation, I want that artist to say that is the genre that I play, because that's how authentic that I like to be. But then when I do my music, I like to bring everything together, and I have a hard time finding a label because everyone gets confused. They're like, "What do you play?" I'm like, "What do you mean? What I play music." So I have this thing where I like to call myself, I love playing fusion, because fusion is it's like a cheating way to saying that I like to play everything. And then jazz to me is improvisation. So I just say jazz fusion.
Right. And I think the fact that we're still having these conversations today revolving around even like in the music sphere of genre and defining genre and putting ourselves in a genre in order to in order to fit the market or to fit the brand, really I think reveals just how much a place of dominance that maintains in our paths. Because when you study music theory, it's like the music theory came after the music. It's not like I'm going to play, oh, Beethoven's playing these sus9s and 11s over this. It's like actually the theory comes after the music. And I think sometimes we forget that, and especially the industry, because it's about making money, right? They want to look at creativity and artistry through definitions and terms and data spreadsheets, where it really should be looking at creativity from creativity outwards and not from like diagrams and all of these equations into the music, if that makes sense in a way.
Of course, it totally makes sense. I have this whole thing where I don't believe in rules. I don't believe in right or wrong. I believe that in life, everything's a perspective. Because
Yeah.
I feel like for me, coming into the scene, it was always like, you have to do it like this, or you have to play like that. Or if the song is coming to the climax, you have to do a big fill and go to the ride cymbal, or your kick pedal has to be like this. And I started seeing like all these different types of people from all walks of life and different backgrounds giving such strong, heavy opinions because it's so dear and near to their heart. But it's like, if I listen to everybody, I wouldn't have my own sound, or I wouldn't have been able to figure out what I want. And so really wrapping my head around, I love all opinions. I respect all the diagrams or all the labeling that people have because it works for a lot of people. But for me, I like to take it all in and understand that there's actually no right and wrong, and it's all just a perspective.
Right. And I also love, speaking of perspective, it's the conversation we hear at the Brooklyn Raga Massive community we have all the time about exploring influence and exploring like the sense of what are your pillars of foundation musically, like because like we talked about a little bit before, during check, it's very much Brooklyn Raga Massive. We have the name Raga embedded, and that's a kind of our northern star, our guiding light. But it also serves as, I feel, a great platform in order to connect cross-culturally, in order to create partnerships and musical relationships and community relationships where they wouldn't have happened otherwise if we were just keeping to just like the indie, like the strict classical sense of Indian identity, whereas, and that's such a permanent conversation because it happens for you, it's happening for us, and you know, kind of have to maintain this sense of openness while understanding that you can kind of have both worlds. You can exist within the best of both worlds.
100 billion%. Like that's my one of my biggest purposes, is that I can exist in both worlds. I can love jazz, but I can also love Indian music. And so many people in music or outside of music are such pillars of that. Like I'm a huge fan of Mindy Kaling.
Okay.
And you know, she's a producer, a writer, and she comes from the Indian heritage. And she's one of the few people who, like, she did a TV series, and which had like Nagara Sang Dhol or like Bollywood songs on a TV show that's on Netflix. Or you see, you know, Padma Lakshmi, you know, like the Padma Lakshmi, I think, if I'm saying her name correctly, like all of these people, or like even if you look at Priyanka Chopra, like all of these people who coexist in both worlds. So it's like, I find it so inspiring.
Yeah, and I find also the sense that, you know, when if you were just to listen to some of your music, you would maybe get certain dimensions, but not necessarily like an Indian influential or familial dimension. But then when you listen to some of the music that you're doing that has embedded in it the Indian dimension to it, you kind of hear that they're one and the same. The grounding is all one and the same. So it's really nice to hear how you present, how your identity kind of expresses itself through in a consistent manner with all of these influences in that way, to kind of to show that, to prove that, which is really nice too.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I was wondering, did you want to do some more playing, or do you want, you do? Okay.
I would love to play 2 songs. And actually, you know what? Let me maybe say the song that I played. So the first track that I did, it was just a loop of a tabla loop. And it was in Tala, which means rhythmic cycle, in a rhythmic cycle 7. It was Tal Rupak. So I was just like having some fun, like improvising over that. It's my favorite Tala to solo and have fun with. And the second song that I played is called Cat Boy. And it's by Mark Lettieri, guitarist from Snarky Puppy. And him and I played together when he came to Toronto in 2019. And when we played this song, I was like, you gotta send me the drumless version so I can play it everywhere.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
And the next 2 tunes that I really would love to play, I have some Indian percussion, some loops of that. I'm going to play some drums on top of that, because that's something that's very near and dear to my heart, is like playing drums or simulating Indian percussion onto the drum kit. And really it came by default, you know, growing up. I'll make the story really short. So growing up in a family of musicians, dad being keyboard player, music director for a lot of like household names that would come from India. Like he, you know, was the music director for Abida Parvin, you know, Mehdi Hassan, and a lot of amazing people. And he never wanted me to play the drums, because he's like, you know, Sarah, I'm trying to protect you, and you know, nobody cares about drummers, and I'm telling you, he's like, you want to be a singer and a piano player. He's like, you'll find out one day. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So he never put me in singing, he never put me in drumming lessons, but put me in Indian classical singing lessons for 15 years, put me in piano lessons for 15 years. And then, because he knew I loved drums so much, he bought me some drum sets and percussion, and he would take me on gigs, and I'd play in his band. But what he would do is, you know, to save some money, he wouldn't hire any tabla or any percussionist, and he would say, Sarah, play that whole rhythm on the drums. And as a kid, I would sit there and play the rhythm, and he's not a drummer, and he's a self-taught musician as well, and he would just tell me, that doesn't feel right. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I'm playing it correctly. He's like, no, it doesn't feel right. He's like, go back to your room, figure out how to do it, and then come back and show me. So that was literally, by default, it was like when I was a child, it was my life's mission to listen to Indian folk rhythms and tabla, and you know, like even dholak. When you look at dholak, people play with their pinky ring on the shell. So for me, okay, cool, that's the rim of the tom. So, you know, it's such a beautiful thing. Anyways, I say this to say that one of the songs that I'm gonna play has a lot of those type of folk rhythms that that are very near and dear to my heart. And the second song I'm gonna play is called Falling Up, and it's a song that I wrote with my friend named Jesse Ryan, and it's a little bit of fusion. So enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay!
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. That was fun.
That was fun.
Yeah.
That was fun. So like playful, but so with such conviction.
Thank you. There were a couple of moments where I was like, God, where's the click? I can't hear the click. I'm like, oh, okay, there it is. So like if I made a couple of slip ups, like please excuse me for that.
Please, please. No one's demarking you. No one's like gonna. You'll still get dessert. You'll still get dessert after dinner.
I see my gulab jamun man, and then I'm good to go. So that's good to hear.
It's funny. I'm calling in from New Jersey, and it took me so long, but just 5 minutes from my brother's house is this biryani house, this Hyderabadi biryani house that's just like killing, and I can't believe it took me this long to find it, but it's fantastic.
Every Tuesday in our house is biryani night.
Is it?
Hyderabadi biryani night. So like, it's the best.
Yeah. And is mom cooking that, or are you cooking that? What's the deal?
No. Oh, I can't cook. Like I can make a salad, Lipton soup. Boiling water is the maximum that I can do. So I rely on my mom for the cooking. But Tuesday, there's like a Hyderabadi biryani place near our house, and it's I think it's like $10. It's like a whole deal. So every Tuesday we're like, get that biryani. It's fun.
Yeah. I love the food, and I think it's just like almost like biryani is such a good representation of, I guess, this new generation, this new era of music, in this world. At least from like the North American perspective. Would you agree with that?
I totally agree. It's very approachable, rice and chicken with spices, How can you go wrong with that?
All stewed together and just fantastic to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit more about, you have a very specific style and approach, and I don't really want to like nerd out on, you're putting like your metric modulation and how you're subdividing. Unless you want to get into that, I'm more than happy to satisfy.
I can get it, whatever is
Okay,
good.
so maybe let's get a little bit into that. So let's, this is kind of almost just like your approach. It's so solid, it's so disciplined, but so musical and fantastic. So do you want to talk about maybe some sort of the technical vocabulary that you implement that speaks to you? Because I just want to first say that we'll talk about this, but this is still coming, and the music and the spirit and the art is first, and then we can like chomp it down into these technical bits. And then the follow-up question would be is, you've obviously seen your sound and your approach to developing over the years, but are you getting a sense, are things changing for you almost like expressively that's making you play differently and changing? And if so, how? But we can do first things first.
Oh my God, I have so much to say in all of them.
Oh,
we'll have to walk through one question at a time because I'm too excited to answer all of them. Yeah. So for me, in terms of, the first question was, repeat it one more time for me.
Okay, so do we want to maybe like break down some of the vocabulary and technical vocabulary that you have incorporated into your sound?
Yeah. So I like to break it down like this: is dancing versus consistency. That's how I see drums. What in my playing is going to be the heartbeat and the consistency, because that's the drummer's role. And then in what other ways can I be playful? So for example, when I'm playing drums, if I'm doing a song like the one I just did, and I want to keep the groove so the listener can feel the pulse, but if I want to add some accents around it, I keep my hi-hat on eighths and it keeps going. And then I have a tendency to hit the E's and the uhs on the cymbal with the kick. And then I don't like to always resolve on one. I like to resolve on two. Or, hit the end of something and then kind of let it breathe. Or so like that's, and for me, there's that quote, I think by Bruce Lee, I fear the man who can do one kick 10,000 different ways rather than 10,000 different kicks or something like that. So for me, that's exactly what I believe. I take one thing, whether it's E's. Let's just say if I'm hitting E's and I keep the hi-hat going, can I hit the E with my left hand? Okay, I'll take a break for a bar, then come back with the E on beat 3, or then I'll hit it with the tom. So it's like it's trying to really get into that headspace. And for me, I don't like, everybody operates very differently. I'll give you an example. So I did this Zildjian live performance last year, 2 years ago, and my song. So everybody had their song. But for me, my song was beautifully written, but I wanted it to be more cutting edge a bit more. But we didn't have time to write it beforehand. So I got to the studio. We were at the studio for 16 hours or something like that. And then at 1 in the morning, it's like, Sarah, what do you want to do with your song? And I was like, oh my God. Like, I felt like I wasn't even going to play. And the next morning, we ran through it twice, and it was just like, go. And what really made me realize is that I thrive in those types of moments. Whereas my amazing friend Matt Greiner, who also played in the series, him and I were talking about this because he was panicking for me, and I'm like, seeing you panic is making me panic. And he's like, the reason I'm panicking for you, he's like, he worked on his song for 2 weeks. He really figured out all of his parts, and whereas I was going in with absolutely no idea. So what I say this to say that everybody operates differently, and you just kind of have to find your strength, whether you have to work out the metric modulations beforehand and the accents that you want. But for me, to help me get into the zone and to help me freely express myself within the groove, I go step by step. I don't go, oh my God, I'm gonna do this and that. For me, it's like, all right, the E, keep it grooving. Okay, I'm feeling like another E on the lighter cymbal. And then it really helps me hear the song, hear the connection to the melody, hear where the accents are of the other instrumentalists, and then correspond in the moment and be creative. Even if a couple of times when I hit the crash with my right hand or on whatever subdivision, then I try to do it with my left hand, so it becomes very spontaneous. So that's kind of where my head's at with this kind of stuff.
And I was saying, even though you're, how you're subdividing and where you're placing it, it's still, again, there's such a grounding to your music, and of course, like, to your music on the drums, your music on your instrument, but also in the music in the context of like the instrumentation and the band that you're playing with, that it's kind of accessible.
Yeah,
And
and sorry, continue.
no, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I can speak to that. I can give you a reason why. So because I grew up playing, so I never touched a drum book till I was like 18 years old. I'm 28 now. So when I was 18, when I went to university, never touched any single book. For me, it was just like, let me hear this groove, or like what, and I would hear it, and then I would feel the feeling of the groove, feel the dynamic of the groove, and adjust. And it was always playing in a band and adapting to vocalists. So I fell in love first. I didn't fall in love with like paradiddles and speed or any of that. That really came after, like a little thing. If you go on my YouTube page, Sara T Drum Guru, and if you scroll down to 2009, if you see my videos in 2009, that was when I never had a drum teacher, and my technique was horrible, but I was playing drums in a very different way. So that's how this approach started for me, is playing for the music first, not caring about stickings, and falling in love with melodies. Oh my God, like, I love melodies and I love music without drums sometimes. So being true to that, and then I started playing gospel music in a church for 5 to 6 years, because I started seeing that, like, where jazz is headed, and I fell in love with pocket when I first heard it, and I'm like, how do you get that feeling of consistency and that bounce? So I became obsessed with gospel music. I learned about pocket, what makes, like, obviously we grew up with the pocket in Indian music, but every genre of music has a different kind of pocket, and what contributes to that pocket, what contributes to making that sound good. So for me, doing my homework. So if you're playing gospel music, the kick and snare is everything. When you're playing jazz, it's the 2 and 4. When you're playing Cuban music, it's the clave, and the dynamic, and it's also like your dynamics within your limbs. You can't hit the kick like the way you hit it in R&B if you're going to hit it in jazz. Absolutely not. When you play the kick in jazz, it's a feathering kind of, maybe heel down. So it's like really building some sort of maturity around, limb dynamic awareness, the sound. Everyone tends to latch onto the sound. So being aware of all these things, learning about pocket, and then getting into like heavy technique. Like that was when I was in my university years, where I'm like, I need to brush up on my technique to be competitive or to be comparable into like the other technical drummers in the scene. So I sat like 6 hours a day, practice, got all these books transcribed, and just built my technique. And then the beautiful thing about listening to a genre that's very percussion based, percussion is very musical, percussion is very lyrical. So for me, playing tabla and like congas and bongos and all that kind of stuff, it made me listen to rhythms in a very percussive way, in a very melodic, in phrasings. So then when I finished school and started getting into the scene a lot more, I took both of those worlds, the groove, the authenticity to the genre, that pocket, and then this approach of the lyrical, tabla dholak fills, the lyrical, da 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 da, oh, boom, like all that kind of stuff. And now, having fun with, and I call it dancing versus consistency. You need to have some sort of consistency, and then how can you dance around that forward motion?
Yeah, I think that's really, I kind of like the little bit of insight, because first of all, to develop the technical capacity with the rudimentary vocabulary and just the physicality at a later age on the instrument um, is a challenge in and of itself. So good on you for being able to take that physical challenge on and be able to overcome. I think that's so fantastic, and it kind of proves to show that fluency and execution and ability and creativity we don't have to subscribe to the myth that we have to have started at the tender age of 3 when I started banging pots and pans in my kitchen. I think it really helps to kind of add a sense of reality to that. And I grew up playing piano and saxophone, and I didn't start playing drums until I was in high school, like end of sophomore year. So for me, when I'm writing, or my influence is like, I'm always about melodies and bass lines first, and then like the drums are secondary to that, and just in my personal creative and compositional approach, right? So it's nice to see that there's different layers that happening at different times in your lives, that in our lives and in your life, that contributes to your sound, to where you are right now in 2021. And then what we're talking about now will definitely help to inform where we see Sarah in 2023 and 25, and when you're in your 40s and in your 50s, and as we go through the decades of our lives, when our life experience changes and our sensibilities change, and just also our physicality changes too, right? Our bodies change as we go through our lives, and I find all of that all very fascinating.
101 billion%. Even the maturity of the mind, I find,
Right.
like for me, I started playing drums, percussion at age 2, but it was in a very organic way where my dad would never say practice because he was trying to do his own music career at the time. So we would just be constantly surrounded by music. And so I guess I guess you can say I was playing drums and percussion from a very young age, but it wasn't like I was sitting there right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left. It was just I really saw music as a whole. Art, even if you start playing music at 18 or 19, if you see art and music as a whole, I think the time of years that you need to maybe feel comfortable behind your instrument gets shortened, because I believe that there's a lot of myths out there. Whoever, people ask me for advice, or whomever I come across, I tell them, don't tell me how many years or days or months you've been playing. And I said, I can tell you that you already have enough to do what you want to do. If you just play eighth notes on your hi-hat, and if you have to take a drum solo, play quarter notes around the drum set, but use your dynamics, use your articulations. And I feel like it's this whole misinterpretation that you have to be this like technique god to play the drums. So I feel like once there's that mental, like I really had to, like, it was definitely like a mental game for me, especially because I was trying to change my approach to the drums, but yet I was still touring and gigging, so I had to fulfill responsibilities and then find time to change my sound. So it really came of, I have enough, but how can I grow from this, rather than when will I be ready, when will the perfect time come. And then as soon as like you start having self-doubt, for me it hinders me from playing. When I used to have a lot of self-doubt and like all these types of thoughts, it didn't even matter that I've been playing for so many years. It's just like, so it's so much more than when did you start playing. I think it's definitely the approach that you have.
Yeah, and I think these conversations about like the mental and the emotional and holistic and integrative conversations are important to have now, because we've been going through the pandemic when we've all been dislodged in so many different ways, and some disproportionately to others, and the kind of self-reflection occurs in different ways in how we view ourselves, and the image projection of self-image on ourselves, and the image that we feel that others are putting upon us. I think these are really kind of important. This is the pandemic has almost made it easier for us to have these conversations, because we're all experiencing this jarring emotional, psychological, physical experience together, where it makes us feel more okay to share that, where the social media platforms and the pre-pandemic, websites would have you make believe that, it's all just success. It's all about the chops. It's all about this. And I think there's something again where Sarah, it's almost like you have this sense of honesty and like not like transparency about you that really has like this holistic insight and integrative insight that I find like really fantastic and really refreshing. It's really great because to be able to speak so comfortably with the audience, especially now virtually, while um, it's just more about vulnerability and resilience, right? And I think you really express that, and I think you embody that, and I think the music, I think drumming, and I think the industry, and I just think the the culture, and I think our the music culture is better for it to have you in it. I really do.
That really means the world to me. Sincerely, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. So we're kind of like ending towards the end of our hour, but I mean, there's more. I'm just kind of like looking at the comments, and they're kind of stuff we all covered again. So I'm just almost like squirrel, squirrel, but everything is good so far. And I want to, maybe if you want, you can do a little more playing if you want. We can go over a little bit if you want. We can do a little more playing, or we can just like kind of end with, what do you think is kind of next? And you don't have to speak like specifically about your next project, because that's not really what I'm talking about, but you've had this year of self-reflection. The year we've had in isolation kind of has been an opportunity for you, as you've expressed, to kind of think about it. So how are you thinking about the role of drumming, the role of music in your life, your approach? Are there shifts happening that you might want to talk about? Or
And I think ending this way in this conversation is awesome because I'm definitely, I really want to share this. So, yes. So again, for me, pre-pandemic was definitely stop, go, stop, go. It was, what kind of tour can I get? What kind of gig can I get? What kind of following can I get? And it was really an obsession of success and being the best and standing out. Whereas, yeah, the world stopped. I had to stop. What does Sarah want? And then I started feeling a little jaded and depressed, thinking of going on tour with a long tour with an artist, where when I think I can do it, like I can be the artist. Since I was a kid, I was the host for like plays, and always on stage and cracking jokes, and I love like being at the front and taking command. And I challenged myself that, how can I just really dive into my authentic self in this time? And the only way to do that right now and to bring it to people is social media. So how can I be as transparent? So every week I would, do some online shopping. What clothes and stuff do I want to do? I lost a lot of weight, worked out a lot. What kind of music do I like? And then I started breaking down these rules. Like, I let go a lot of people in my life that I felt were really making my way of thinking very square, that you have to do this, you have to do that, or oh, you sped up a BPM here and there, and you have to conduct yourself like this. Like, if I show you my t-shirt, the Sarah Thawer drum faces, let me tell you, like, this is my merch. And how many people told me, you're gonna ruin your reputation? I'm like, I don't care. Like, this is the stuff that like makes me want to wake up in the morning. And because there was no human interaction with someone like pointing fingers or saying anything at me, I just did whatever I wanted to do. And then I started getting more comfortable. And I'll say something else. I started getting into, I call it funny, like just like spoken word rapping. I just like put the mic on, and I would pick a topic, and I would just like go off and play it's like, it's so much fun for me to do. And I like, it got people loved it. People messaged me, they're like, are you on drugs? Or like, what has the pandemic done to you? I'm like, see, like, that just shows like that I really wasn't being myself. Like, people didn't know who I was. So anyway, I did this one video. I took Tears for Fears, and I did there was a whole metric modulation for drummers going on, and everyone sounded so killing, and I'm like, I need to take this up a notch. So I started like speaking the lyrics, but I'm not trying to be like, Mariah Carey and, hit all the notes on pitch. For me, it was to show the technicality of it. So I was like singing like a tone deaf person and playing grooves. And I remember the day I put up that video, I lost like 500, 600 followers online, like in like an hour. I called my sister, I called my fiance, and I called him, and I'm like, is my life over? Is my career over? And my sister and him were like, what matters most? Does this make you happy? I'm like, yeah. I'm so proud of it. And they're like, forget the rest. And even I had mentors at the time who I looked up to, were like, you're ruining your career. But I put all that aside, and I just trusted my gut. And I've been just doing that ever since, and I feel like it's really blossoming in a beautiful way. And I'm taking on this next journey now of like really focusing on being an artist, but playing with other musicians that I truly want to. So being very selective now.
I think that is fantastic. I've seen the videos, the spoken word videos, and for everyone listening, in real time, and for those of you who are listening in the future, which is now your present, I encourage you to just check it out. I think, Sarah, what you did there is kind of, you embraced your joy and you are embracing the perfection of imperfection and really like just genuine self-expression. And if you haven't checked out any of Sarah's latest spoken word videos, I highly recommend it. It kind of also shows, because, what your creative expression in your drumming and like the Zildjian live stuff, or like the musics, the stuff we're doing on stage, that is just like very demanding. It demands proficiency, fluency, creativity, but also within that, to see the spoken word videos is to see you embracing joy in that other way, in this performative way. I find fantastic. And for the 500, 600 followers who no longer follow you, who only exist in our minds anyway, like it's just like this weird like matrix construct that we put upon ourselves. You build a new audience that will embrace that joy and that sense of self expression that incorporates different modalities of creativity, of artistry, of humanity, that I think I know you will, and that you do, but you'll become to appreciate so much more in that type of way, right? So I think we'll leave it there. Sarah, it's been such a joy having you join us. I hope you'll come in and visit us again soon.
Listen, I'm hoping to come in person next time.
Please.
So that would be fantastic. Most definitely, yes.
Okay, so we will continue to stay in touch. We'll continue to bug each other. I can't thank you again. Thank you, everyone, for visiting us on YouTube in real time. Thanks of you who are tuning in the future. Again, your support for this programming, just showing up, and of course, donating and sharing where you can, means the world. This is the Brooklyn Raga Massive weekly virtual series. Please visit brooklynragamassive.com for more future events and past events. And please visit Sarah's website. Sarah, what's your website one more time?
SarahThawer.com.
SarahThawer.com. You heard it here first. Thanks again, everyone. Stay safe. Let's continue to think of all of the families and friends around the world that are still struggling with the COVID pandemic. It might be getting easier here in North America, but it's still, people around the world are still facing the challenges that come with COVID. So let's remember, count our blessings each and every day. And again, see everybody next week. Thanks again. Good night.